Welcome to The Secret Case. Today we'll be talking about one of the most gruesome cases in English criminal history, the West family and the infamous House of Horrors. This case shook the entire country when it came to light, revealing a series of crimes committed by two people who seemed to lead an ordinary life on the surface, but who were hiding dark secrets at home. In this video, we'll explore how Fred and Rosemary West were responsible for a chain of disappearances and crimes spanning decades, and how their home at 25, Cromwell Street became the scene of atrocities that left an indelible mark on England's criminal history. Remember to subscribe and activate the notification bell to stay up to date with the most chilling and mysterious cases in the world. This channel is dedicated to unearthing the darkest secrets of humanity, and this case is undoubtedly one of the most disturbing. To understand how Fred West became the monster we know today, it is important to know his childhood. Fred was born in 1941 to a rural family in Herefordshire, England. His family life was not easy, marked by physical abuse and emotional neglect. Fred, like many criminals, grew up in an environment where violence was a daily occurrence. From a young age, Fred displayed problematic behaviors. He was known to be manipulative, and his relationships with women were toxic and abusive. In his teens, Fred suffered a motorcycle accident that left him with a serious head injury, which some experts believe may have contributed to his violent behavior in later years. Despite his turbulent life, Fred managed to hide his dark desires under a facade of normality for a long time. His first marriage was to Catherine Costello, with whom he had 2 children. However, the relationship was dysfunctional from the start, and Fred began to show signs of sadistic behavior. By the time the relationship ended, Fred had already committed his first violent crime, but this would only be the beginning of a spiral of violence and cruelty that would culminate in the terrible crimes he committed with Rosemary. Rosemary Pauline Letts, better known as Rosemary West, was born in 1953 into a family also marked by chaos and violence. Her father suffered from mental health issues and was extremely controlling and abusive towards his family. Rosemary's childhood was a reflection of the constant abuse she experienced, and some reports suggest that this led her to develop a cold and manipulative personality. When Fred and Rosemary met, she was only 15 years old. Despite the age difference and the obvious red flags, Rosemary quickly found herself drawn to Fred. Soon after, they began a toxic relationship that would involve both physical and psychological abuse, not only towards her, but towards others as well. Fred and Rosemary married in 1972, and this marriage became a dangerous alliance. Both found in each other a willing accomplice to fulfill their darkest desires. The couple settled at 25, Cromwell Street in the city of Gloucester, England. At first glance, the house looked like just another one in the neighborhood, but inside it hid a real hell. The house became the scene of a series of heinous crimes that included kidnappings, extreme violence and disappearances. For years, the couple lured young women to their home, where they subjected them to terrible abuse. Fred and Rosemary West specialized in capturing vulnerable people, many of whom were young runaways or girls looking for work. They used different strategies to lure their victims, and once inside the house, they subjected them to inhuman suffering. What is most disturbing about this case is that, for more than 20 years, the couple was able to commit their crimes without being discovered. Even the couple's own children suffered abuse inside that house. One of the most famous victims was Charmaine West, Fred's daughter from his first marriage. Charmaine was murdered by Rosemary when she was just 8 years old. This was one of the first clues that the police would have years later to unmask the Wests. Over the years, Fred and Rosemary West are believed to have been responsible for the disappearance and murder of at least 12 young girls. However, investigators believe the actual number of victims could be much higher. The Wests' victims were brutally assaulted and, in many cases, murdered. The bodies were buried in the basement and garden of the house, which would later be nicknamed the House of Horrors. Among the most famous victims is Heather West, Fred and Rosemary's biological daughter. Heather was murdered when she was just a teenager, and her body was buried in the garden of the family home. Most chillingly, Fred would threaten the other children, telling them that, if they didn't behave, they would end up like Heather, referring to his sister's fate. Heather's disappearance in 1987 was what finally led police to investigate the West family further. Suspicions began to mount, and neighbors began reporting strange behavior in the West home. The disappearance of one of their own daughters was the turning point that would ultimately lead to the discovery of the crimes. On February 25, 1994, police finally got a warrant to search the West home. What they found was far worse than anyone could have imagined. In the basement and garden of the home, investigators unearthed the remains of several victims who had been murdered over the years. Each discovery was more terrifying than the last. Fred West was arrested later that year, and soon after, Rosemary was also arrested. During questioning, Fred confessed to having participated in several of the murders, but attempted to exonerate Rosemary, claiming that she had not been involved. However, the evidence indicated otherwise. Statements from the couple's children were also key in Rosemary's conviction. What's most shocking is that despite Fred's confessions, many of the details about how the crimes were committed and the true number of victims remain a mystery. Fred committed suicide in prison before he could be tried, leaving many questions unanswered. Meanwhile, Rosemary was convicted for her role in the murders and is currently serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The West family case remains one of the most chilling in UK criminal history. Their ability to conceal so many crimes for so long raises questions about how they could have gone undetected for years. Close neighbors and relatives claimed not to have suspected anything, making the case all the more terrifying. The case also raised questions about the way police handled the disappearances of the young girls. Authorities have been criticized for not acting more quickly in the investigation, especially after the disappearance of Heather West. It is believed that if they had taken the allegations of abuse at the home more seriously, many lives could have been saved. Furthermore, this case opened a debate on how to deal with offenders who show signs of extreme cruelty from an early age. Fred and Rosemary West were examples of individuals who grew up in abusive environments, but their ability to hide their true behavior for so long remains disconcerting. The story of Fred and Rosemary West is a reminder that in many cases, the most terrifying criminals are not those hiding in the shadows, but those who appear to lead normal lives. The facade of normality they presented to the world allowed them to commit their crimes without raising suspicion for decades. The so-called House of Horrors remains a symbol of the horrors that can occur even in the most unexpected places. If you have been shocked by this case, we invite you to subscribe to our channel and activate notifications so you don't miss any details of the most terrifying and mysterious cases. This is just one of the many crimes we have investigated, and we have many more cases to explore. Remember that on this channel we seek not only to tell the stories, but also to reflect on the warning signs that, in many cases, went unnoticed. So, don't forget to give us a like and leave us your opinion in the comments. See you in the next case.